Shalom, everyone. I am the Chief Magician of Mystery Babylon, and I will be your Grandmaster and host for this podcast. I say podcast because I intend this session to be a light one. I only have really like a couple of slides prepared, and you don't really need to see them unless you really need to see them. But if you're an initiate or an adept, you won't really need to see them. So I intend this to really be like a light podcast, easy on the ears. Um, just want to do a very lighthearted but very, very Kabbalistic and mystical disquisition on some very esoteric levels of the Lurianic Qabbalah. So for this podcast, in order to fully understand what I'm going to be teaching and speaking about, it is very requisite that you are very well acquainted with the Lurianic Qabbalah, that you are very well acquainted with Shara Hal-Gilgulim of Chaim Vital, which is our most principal text on metempsychosis. So you're going to need to be very familiar and initiated into the esoteric laws and principles of metempsychosis. So very, very strong prerequisite for this podcast. So I'll go ahead and just begin. I want to speak about our existentiality because our existence principally is divided into various parts or theme. And there are very many esoteric levels to this, right? So there are many levels to our existence. And I've done a lot of videos introducing very esoteric concepts and wisdom behind the nature and quintessence of our existence, right? So in antiquity, they taught that principally our existence was trilateral, vis-a-vis the nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama. But once you get initiated into the higher grades, specifically the Lurianic Qabbalah, you learn that actually it's 5 parts Sufi. But there are even higher grades of initiation. As I've stated in I think a few other videos, the reality is that we are composed of 9 parts Yufim, one less than the 10, because we are an image of Hashem, and because Hashem is comprised of 10 Sferoth, then it logically follows that we must be comprised of 10 parts Yufim or Sferoth. Unfortunately, you're only given and told half of the story in the Lurianic Qabbalah, where they teach that we are comprised of 5 parts Yufim. It's true, we are comprised of 5 parts Yufim, just like the Godhead. The Godhead is comprised of 5 parts Yufim, but we must also understand that these 5 parts Yufim encompass 10 Sferoth. And so we are comprised of 5 parts Yufim that encompass 10 Sferoth. Again, this is all very, very esoteric. So when we, and just to let you know, I'm going to be speaking on a lot of esoteric wisdom taken from Shar Hal-Gilgulim. I'm not citing chapters from that book because I'm going to be all over the place. I'm going to be all over Shar Hal-Gilgulim. So the expectation is that you have read, all of Shar Hal-Gilgulim and are well acquainted with this text. So we, understanding this, then, right, we also know that in our lifetime, the principal mission of our lifetime is to ascend, these levels, right? So we understand that there are many levels that can be attained, in terms of spirituality, right? Because I have given thus far an oversimplification of the matter, because there are 5 parts of to each universe, right? So our existence can be made up of numerous levels, okay? So by keeping the mitzvot and studying the Kabbalah, both exoteric and esoteric, we attain higher levels of spirituality, right? We attain these much higher levels. So we have a major problem because we know that the vast majority of humanity is given a nefesh at birth, right? But this nefesh comes from Asiya. So all they have is a very low nefesh from Asiya. The vast majority are given a nefesh from Malchut of Asiya. And that's all they're given. And then the expectation is that they climb higher levels, that they climb to the nefesh of, say, Tiferet of Asiya, all the way up to Kether of Asiya, and then obtain a ruach from the universe of Yetzirah, and obtain a neshama from the universe of Bria, etc. But this never happens, right? So because the vast majority of the world is so ignorant and so spiritually blind and have no understanding of these supernal matters, they never really get past obtaining a nefesh of Asiya. You know, they're born and are given a very low nefesh of Asiya, and then 99% of the goyim leave and die with just that low nefesh of Asiya, never attaining anything more than that. And we have to understand that in terms of the nefesh, right, that the nefesh principally is an interface to our body, right? The nefesh is linked to the five senses and the mind. It's essentially, quintessentially, an interface to the body. So there really isn't much spirituality to the nefesh because it's almost entirely linked to the body, okay? And so we read time and time again in our Kabbalistic texts, both exoteric and esoteric, this very strong emphasis on learning the mitzvot and keeping the mitzvot, studying the Torah, and studying and learning the esoteric wisdom or Qabbalah. Now, again, we have another major problem because the Goyim, they don't know the Torah, right? The Christians, they don't know the Torah. The Muslims don't know the Torah. They don't even know one drop of Qabbalah, okay? Esoteric Qabbalah, okay? And you have to wonder when you have these Christians, right, that happen to read our Jewish texts and this strong emphasis on the Torah, what is going through their mind? Right? We're talking about the ancient sages here. We're talking about divine men here. Okay? We're talking about the divine Torah here. And this is why I have to be so harsh, and I'm always having to tell all of these Christians in their face, you are extraordinarily and staggeringly stupid and retarded. Hashem doesn't change. It is written in our ancient oracles, Hashem does not change. If he wrote in the Torah, and there are verses where it states, you should be studying Torah day and night, that command has not changed. But the Christians don't study the Torah day and night. The Muslims don't even know the Torah. And the Goyim, forget about the Goyim, they don't even count. Right? So you have to be an initiate and adept to understand the emphasis and the extremely ridiculously momentous nature of studying the Torah, both the written and the oral Torah, mind you, not just the written Torah, the oral Torah. We have stupid, retarded Jews that reject the oral Torah. If you are a Jew, if you are a Karaite Jew that rejects the oral Torah, you are a retard. I'm sorry to tell you, you're a retard. You're our brothers. We love you, okay? But you're retards, okay? And so the quintessential initiate and adept is studying the Torah day and night, is studying the written and the oral Torah day and night, and studying the Kabbalah and the esoteric wisdom. Now, why is this important, right? Because, again, we learn in Sha'ar HaGilgulim, right? We're told by the Arizal, by Hamashek Israel, that you can attain these higher levels of spirituality and consciousness without doing these things. Now, there's a very powerful and important teaching in Shahar Gilgulim, and I think that it goes over the heads of most Jews studying this holy text, right? Chaim Vital states, and this is coming from the Arizal, of course, definitely coming from the Arizal, he states that if an Israelite just keeps the mitzvot, all he attains is a nefesh, right? So you're given a nefesh from Asiyah. So if you keep all the mitzvot, then you'll probably be able to attain a nefesh all the way up from the universe, I don't know, say of Bria, okay? Maybe even Atziluth for that matter, okay? We can possibly say that your nefesh, you will have a complete nefesh of all four universes if you keep all the mitzvot, okay? But that's it. So what's so significant about this is that the observance of the mitzvot is linked to the lowest forms and levels of spirituality. And the implications and the ramifications of this are so staggering, so ridiculously staggering, that I assure you, I don't even have the time and space to get into it in this podcast. I really don't. Okay? But I want you to understand this, because I hope that, at some point, you'll begin to tread upon this path of understanding the implications and the ramifications of this staggering teaching that the observance of the mitzvot is linked to the lowest level of spirituality and consciousness. Okay? And so in order to get to the next level, which is a ruach, just to obtain a ruach, you have to be studying the Torah, both the written and the oral Torah, extensively, right? It's not until you come to a full mastery of the oral and written Torah that you're then able to complete the ruach, of all four universes, okay? And so this is what separates us from everyone else, right? So here's the thing, and here's what's really important to understand, okay? When you obtain these higher levels of spirituality and consciousness, it's not like your third eye opens and all of a sudden you see the next level come down. Okay, let's say right now you have a ruach. Your ruach is at the level of Tifereth of Yetzirah. Okay, all of a sudden, a month from now, you obtain a ruach from Kether of Yetzirah. It's not like all of a sudden your third eye is going to open and you're going to see, the ruach of Kether of Yetzirah suddenly descend upon and come into you. It doesn't work that way. Or it's not like all of a sudden you're going to get goosebumps and you're going to feel, that higher ruach come into you. It doesn't work that way. But that's what separates us from everyone else, is that we have true spirituality and we are in a true state of the highest consciousness, of the highest levels of consciousness that exist. Okay? And so we also learn that when you study the esoteric wisdom, the holy esoteric wisdom, the real esoteric Qabbalah that practically no one knows these days, that's when you begin to obtain the levels of the neshama. Okay? And you can even go higher. When you penetrate the deepest and most esoteric levels of the Qabbalah, you can even obtain levels higher than the neshama. You can obtain the chaya and the yechidah. And very, very, we're talking less than a handful of people in centuries that attain these levels of consciousness. Okay? And the truth of the matter is that these very lofty, sublime levels of consciousness and spirituality that are from the universe of Bria and the universe of Atziluth, very, very few individuals, okay, get to these levels. I'm one of those very few individuals that has reached levels of spirituality in these high universes, okay? I'm one of a very small handful of people because of how deep and sublime my initiation is and has been, okay? Now, we have these goyim right? We have goyim that they're searching for the truth, and they go, let's say, to Tibetan monks, Hindu gurus, where there's no spirituality there. There's no spirituality there for the most part whatsoever. Okay? You're lucky if you find a nice kosher holy group. There are some kosher holy groups there, but they're very inferior. They're vastly inferior, to our groups. And so if you go, most of the time you're going to an impure, unholy sect where there's no spirituality, right? As an example, we have a lot of goyim nowadays that are so fascinated with yoga. And yoga is a demonic art. It's demonic exercises. They're satanic demonic exercise and art. And the goyim don't know this because all they have is the lowest nefesh of Asiyah. They don't possess a ruach. They don't possess a neshama. Don't for 1 second, do not be stupid. Do not be retarded in thinking that all these goyim, that even Christians and Muslims, do you think that they have ruachim? Do you think they have neshamot? They don't. They don't. That's why they're so ignorant. That's why they're so blind. And so these goyim, all they have the lowest nefesh. The lowest nefesh from the lowest universe of Asiyah. Everything is carnal from them. They're so carnal. They're so in the body. And so all of a sudden, they do these yoga exercises. Some of them begin to levitate, and they perceive that as true spirituality because all they have is a nefesh. Now you have to remember, okay? You have to remember, the lowest nefesh of Asiyah is in the klipoth. Some of these nefashot are near the klipoth, and some of them are immersed within the klipoth. And so they're blinded because they're near and immersed by the klipoth. They're blinded. So these goyim, they have the lowest nefesh that's surrounded by the klipoth. They do these yoga exercises and they start to levitate, and they perceive that as true spirituality. Some of them are so blind and so ignorant because, again, they have a humongous lack of spirituality. They think that it's them doing these exercises that's causing the levitation. All of a sudden, they think they're enlightened. They think, oh, I'm the cause of this levitation. I've reached a state of nirvana. And because I've reached this exalted state of consciousness, I'm levitating. And what they don't realize is that it's demons that are levitating them. They're inviting demons. They're being possessed by demons, by the klipoth. And they don't know it. They don't see the demon. It's not like the demon all of a sudden appears to them. Sometimes, by the way, sometimes these demons do appear to them. There are testimonials where people will see these demons. And again, even when they do see the demons, they're so stupid, so blind, they don't even know they're demons. I mean, I don't know how stupid and retarded you can be to see these demons and not know that they're demons. You have to be really stupid and retarded, but some of them are so stupid and so retarded, they still keep on going on with the exercises. They still keep on going on with the yoga. But for those that don't see the demons, right, they're invisible. They're the ones that are causing all of the physical effects that they're experiencing, not knowing it. And so we have negative. This is what I would term negative spirituality. If we're not going to call it an oxymoron, because now they're retarding. If now you're possessed by demons, right? You're no longer in the holy domain. You're no longer in the holy spiritual domain. Now you've retarded backwards into the unholy domain, into the klipoth. Okay, so because they don't have any spirituality, they have the lowest form, the lowest level of spirituality. That's why they're so ignorant. That's why they're so spiritually blind and have no understanding of these matters whatsoever and of what's going on. Now, in the esoteric Qabbalah, all of this is revealed. You'll fully understand these other theosophies. What are their operations? What's going on? What are the name of these demons? You'll understand all of it. You'll know it inside and out. You'll know what's truly going on. Because part of holy initiation is also Luciferian initiation. You don't just master the holy domain, you also master the Sitra Akhra. You know the names of all the fallen angels, the demons, how to invoke them, you know black magic, you know everything about everything when you become Grandmaster. So you know all this stuff. You know what's going on. You're not a retard. You're not stupid. You're not blind. Like all of these Goyim are. Especially because, and how is this? Because you're attaining these levels of consciousness. That's what's opening your eyes. That's what's giving you supernal vision into all matters. The more Torah you study, as long as you ensure that you've been initiated into the mitzvot, you are observing as many of the mitzvot that apply. You're studying the Torah, the written Torah, the oral Torah. You are studying the esoteric Qabbalah. You are ascending the spiritual ladder of the Sferoth and the Partsufim. And the process is gradual in the beginning, you know. You start all the way at the bottom and you work your way to the top. Now, everyone incarnates at a different level. Sometimes initiation can happen very rapidly for one soul, more rapidly than the other, because the soul is coming from a much more exalted root from Adam Kadmon. Take myself, for example, okay? My initiation began at a very young age, and I ascended the ladder very, very quickly, okay? But I'm an exception. It's not like that for most other people, okay? And so everyone's at a different level. I mean, when I say this, I'm talking spiritually, you know, in terms of whether you have a nefesh or ruach, and what level, in what universe, in what root, in what branch your nefesh or neshama corresponds to, and where you are in the progression of the divine ladder. Now, I wanna just briefly speak about a verse in the Torah. And I want to expound on a very, very esoteric, mystical level of this verse. And you'll want to go to Bereshith, chapter 32, verse 23. And there we read that same night he arose, and taking his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 children, he crossed the ford of Yabok. Okay? Now, unfortunately, you read most Torah commentaries, and they'll just expound this verse on a pashat or literal level. It's kind of sad, because there's a lot of esoteric, mystical things going on here when you look under the hood. So what does this mean? You know, what does this represent, that Yaakov crossed the Yabok River? Right? We're not concerned with the pashat here. We know that there's some very, very powerful esoteric stuff going on here. This is very significant. These are all occult code words. These are all occult symbols, occult processes that are being delineated here. Now, duly note that the Hebrew name Yabok, which is the name of the river, contains all the letters that are found in the name Yaakov. Right? Yabok is Yod Beth Kof, and Yaakov is all those 3 letters with the addition of the letter Ain. So it's very, very interesting that essentially the name of this ford is essentially a permutation of the name Yaakov. So that's our first hint. That's our first clue and key to unlocking these much more esoteric levels. Now, unfortunately, I really don't have the time and space to fully unlock some of these levels, because they're just very, very comprehensive in nature and very, very, very deep. Okay? Dealing with arcana of the highest order, I assure you. So I'm just going to reveal one small level of these arcana to this verse. Now you can look at the screen, and I have 3 divine names there. the name Adonai, Yod He Waw He, and Aleph He Yod He, which is Ayah. Now, if you take the gematria of each of these names and you add it up, it comes to equate to Yabok, the name of the ford. This is another clue, another powerful hint and key to unlocking these arcana. Now, in the very esoteric Lurianic Qabbalah, as is briefly touched upon in Shar HaGilgulim, there is a state of consciousness that is known as Yabok. And again, less than a handful of people reach this level of consciousness and spirituality known as Yabok. It's an extraordinarily, extremely sublime and hidden level of consciousness and spirituality. When I say that less than a handful of people reach and attain this level, we're of course referring to grandmasters, and in some cases as divine men. Now, each of these divine names refers to a level of spirituality. Now, in Shar HaGilgulim, he equates these three levels to the Nefesh, the Ruach, and the Neshama. I, however, prefer to correspond these levels to the Neshama, the Chaya, and the Yechida. But I guess any permutation thereof will suffice. The point is that you have to attain three levels. And we've already broken down the three major categories of initiation and ascension vis-a-vis the mitzvot, what's known as pardes, or the attainment and complete initiation into all levels of the written and oral Torah, and mastery of the esoteric wisdom, the holy esoteric wisdom, which also includes the satanic or black wisdom, Luciferian wisdom, because Luciferian wisdom is a subset of the esoteric holy wisdom. Why else do you think that King Shlomo was the highest and most powerful magician in the entire Aeon? Get a clue. And so again, we're talking about less than a handful that reach these levels because most people don't know all the mitzvot, let alone are able to keep all of the mitzvot that apply. Most people don't have the time to study the oral and written Torah on a daily basis. And even less are the men that on top of this are able to master the esoteric wisdom. Right? See, these levels of initiation, span a lifetime. A lifetime. And it entails a lot of hard work and a lot of time, a lot of time. And that's just how it is. So I just want to conclude by emphasizing the importance of observing the mitzvot, of studying the written and oral Torah and mastering it, and studying the esoteric Kabbalah, because this is what increases your spirituality and ascends you and elevates you to higher levels of consciousness. Okay, now some may respond back and might want to counter back with antinomian levels of understanding, in the sense that, well, Mashiach has abrogated certain mitzvot. This is a very complex issue, which I have touched upon in other videos, and I do not wish to intertwine this holy teaching with that aspect of understanding. What I will say is that, yes, certain mitzvot have been abrogated and suspended. This is very well known by the grandmasters and the masters. And despite that, it in no way takes away or diminishes this entire holy teaching that I have thus far delivered. The fact of the matter is that there are many mitzvot that still apply, that are still valid, and must be observed and kept and executed. Okay? This is not the time or space for discussing what those mitzvot are. The initiate and the adept is expected to understand what those mitzvot are and will know what those mitzvot are. So again, I want to conclude by just, again, it cannot be emphasized enough. It just can. And sometimes I feel that you have to be a Jew. Why else is it that there are so many Christians and Muslims and Goyim that don't understand this, can't understand this, you know? Except for those that are converts. There are Christians and Muslims and Goyim that do convert to Judaism, and these are very special, exalted souls, because their eyes were opened at some point into seeing the full truth, and thus become grafted in to the holy olive tree of Israel. And so these are very, very special, exalted souls. These are, you could say, are the exceptions. But for everyone else, right? Why can't they see this? Why don't they understand this? And as I've already said, it's because they have a very low nefesh at the lowest level that is near and surrounded by the klipoth, right? As we learn in Shar HaGugulim and many Lurianic texts. And so that's why they they are very inferior, and are born at a severe and very great disadvantage. And without the assistance of Hashem or holy divine souls like ourselves, they don't really stand a chance. And so part of our mission is to redeem many of these divine sparks. And the good news is that there are a number of divine sparks that are being redeemed in this last generation, and are beginning to to see and understand the truth slowly, little by little. So that concludes this nice, light, hearted podcast. Shalom. Wassalam.